Hello, and welcome back to week 2 of our B2 English adventure. I'm Kim with Speaking English Language School, your host for the next 24 weeks together. Last week, we set our goals and got ready for this journey. How did setting SMART goals go for you? Let me know in the comments below. This week, we're diving into one of the most useful skills in any language, storytelling. In today's lesson, we'll learn how to use different past tenses together to tell clear, engaging stories about our experiences. So when we tell stories, we rarely just use one past tense. We mix them all together to show the sequence of events throughout time, background actions, and actions completed right before others. These are our main tools in English: the past simple, the past continuous, the past perfect simple, and the past perfect continuous. Don't worry, we're going to break them all down for you. So all the tenses we'll be talking about today fall in the category of narrative tenses. As I said, we use them for telling stories. The first one we have is the past simple. This is really your foundation. It describes actions that are completed in the past, often one after another. The main events of your story. For example, yesterday I went to the park. I sat on the bench and read my book. I answered a call. I waved to a friend also in the park. So as you can see on the timeline here, we have one event happening after another. Past continuous. This tense sets the scene or describes an action that was in progress at a specific time in the past when another shorter action happened. Let's think of this as background action. For example, while I was reading my book, this is the long action. I was reading my book. You can see the wavy line, the wavy squiggly line. My phone rang. This is that short interrupting action. Another example. At 3 p.m. yesterday, I was sitting on the bench. So we have an action in progress. I was sitting on the bench, and then 3 p.m. came, and I was sitting on the bench. 3 p.m. is that specific time. You could see the pinpoint showing that specific time, and the wavy line meaning I was sitting on the bench, a long action. Past perfect simple. This tense is crucial for clarity. Use it for an action that was completed before another action in the past. So it helps to show the order when events aren't told in a sequence or in chronological order. For example, when my phone rang, I answered it. I had forgotten to put it on silent earlier. So as you can see on the timeline, the forgetting happens before the answering of the phone. Another example, by the time I got to the park, it had started to rain. So the raining happened before I got to the park. Maybe as I was walking to the park, it started to rain, and I got to the park and it was raining. And now you have made it to the last of our 4 narrative tenses for today, the past perfect continuous. This is super similar to the past perfect simple, but it emphasizes the duration of an activity that was happening before another event in the past. I know that's a mouthful, but let's break it down. So think of this as the duration of an earlier past action that was taking place when another event happened. For example, my eyes were tired because I had been reading for 2 hours before my phone rang. So this emphasizes really the 2 hours spent reading before the call. Another example, the ground was wet because it had been raining all morning. So this really emphasizes the duration of the earlier rain. The ground was wet because of all the time that it had been raining in the morning. So we have the wavy line to indicate that we had been reading, or that it had been raining. So it emphasizes the duration of time. And then we have the point to emphasize the action that occurred. Using all 4 of these tenses together makes our stories much clearer and much more interesting for the listener. The key is just understanding when things happened relative to each other. But now we're going to move on to some vocabulary that can help us tell stories a little bit better. First, we're going to look at linkers, so linking words, and then we'll take a look at some feeling words we can use as well. So to connect our story smoothly, we have to use some linking words. Let's take a look at some examples. The first we have are sequencing words. For example, first, then, next, after that, finally, later. The next we have words for simultaneous actions, so actions that happen at the same time. These are, for example, while, as, meanwhile. The next, sudden events, suddenly, all of a sudden. Lastly, we have concluding words, eventually, in the end. And if you were listening carefully, you heard me say the word lastly. That's another sequencing word to indicate finally or the end. So our concluding words mean the end, eventually, in the end. Now let's add some adjectives to describe some feelings and events that we can use in our stories. So some feeling words, for example, surprised, relieved, anxious, thrilled, disappointed, confused, embarrassed. And some words that describe events, unexpected, memorable, hilarious, disastrous, awkward, heartwarming. Here's a quick example of how I used a linker word and two adjectives in a sentence. Eventually, I found my keys, which is a relief after such an unexpected day. So you'll notice that I have the linking word eventually and two adjectives here, relief and unexpected. Now it's time to put it all together into a story because this class is all about storytelling. I'm going to tell you a very short story about something that happened to me last week, and you could read along on the screen as well. So I want you to listen carefully, pay attention carefully to how I use the past tenses. So last Tuesday, I decided to bake some cookies. I had found a new recipe online the day before and was looking forward to trying it. I gathered all the ingredients. While I was mixing the flour and the sugar, I realized I had forgotten to buy eggs. I had been planning to go shopping later that day, but now I needed them immediately. Eventually, I ran to the nearest shop, bought the eggs, and came back. The cookies were delicious in the end, but it was quite a stressful start. So, as I was reading, did you notice how had found and had forgotten happened before the main story started? So, I had found a new recipe the day before, and I had forgotten to buy eggs. So, all of that was even before I started baking. And was mixing and was looking forward to described actions in progress and background feeling. So was mixing, that's an action in progress. And was looking forward to, that's a background feeling. That's how narrative tenses work together to tell a story. Now it's your turn to practice speaking. Think about a recent memorable event. It could be something funny, surprising, or challenging. Anything. Answer these questions. What happened? What were you doing just before or when it happened? What had happened before that event that's important? Maybe what had you been doing for some time before? So I want you to pause the video, take a minute or two to think about your story and the tenses, then try telling the story out loud to yourself. You could just tell it to yourself. You could record yourself speaking. But the most important thing is to practice producing the language. Go on and pause the video now. Welcome back. How did it go? It takes practice, so don't worry if it wasn't perfect. The more you try, the more natural it will become. And speaking of more practice, we're going to do some more right now in the form of writing. You're going to take that story you just said out loud and write it down, but maybe add some more details too. And ensure you're using at least 3 of the narrative tenses we learned today. The most common combination is the past simple, past continuous, and past perfect simple. Let's look at a quick example. Last weekend, I went hiking. The sun was shining when I started. I hadn't checked the weather forecast properly before I left home. After about an hour while I was climbing a steep hill, dark clouds gathered suddenly. It started to rain heavily. Eventually, I found shelter under a tree, completely soaked. Pause the video and write your own paragraph in your notebook or maybe on a document on your computer. Feel free to share it in the comments if you'd like feedback from myself and from the rest of the community. So today we unlocked the power of the narrative tenses. Remember, past simple for the main sequence, past continuous for the background, past perfect simple for earlier completed actions, and past perfect continuous for the duration of those earlier actions. Practice telling stories about your day or weekend using these tenses. Next week, in week 3, we're shifting focus to talk about work, careers, and experiences using the past perfect simple and continuous. How do we talk about our job and ongoing projects? Find out next time. Great job today. Storytelling is a fantastic skill to develop. Keep practicing those narrative tenses. And if you found this lesson helpful, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't already. Click on the bell so you don't miss week 3. Share your practice paragraph or any questions in the comments below. Keep up the great work, and I'll see you next week.